Welcome back, Royal fam, to another installment of Royal Comics. Howdy, how you doing? What's poppin'? It's your boy Cheno, baby. Hope everybody's doing great. We about to dive on into the second part of Marvel Civil War by the GOAT, Mr. Rob from Rob Core, aka Comics Explains. Man, I hope y'all be checking out his videos. Like I said, the link will always be down in the description. But without further ado, let's kick this video off.
All up on the top, tell me rumble man, you know I'm always hungry. We in the jungle, only lions, no monkeys. Only hustle and we are moving the plan before the huddle. Bitches bite up on the price, say combo, yeah we hungry. Yeah baby, yeah we hungry. Yeah baby, yeah we hungry. Yeah baby, yeah we hungry. Definition of a
This song's a slap, like for real.
So during our discussion of Civil War issue number 1, we had talked about the events that really kind of led into the Civil War itself. That is to say, we saw the New Warriors confronting a group of supervillains. We saw one of the supervillains, Nitro, self-destructing and destroying a large portion of Stamford, Connecticut, which in turn started a chain reaction, which ultimately led to superheroes kind of drawing this line in the sand, where we had Captain America going underground and Iron Man taking the side of the federal government.
Let me know. I said this in the first part, but let me know what side you are. Are you Iron Man or are you Cap? What side? If one of them walked up, which side are you taking? Which hand are you shaking? Which one's your boy? You know, who are you dapping up? You understand me? Like, yeah, that's my boy Iron Man. And I said this in the last one too. I think I can't remember exactly. I think Cap was against everything. I think I would be Iron Man because it's just like you can't operate in the way. It's literally kind of like Magneto and Professor X. A little bit. But I'm literally going to have to side with Iron Man because you're going to have to coexist. Like, period. You can't just be like, well, it's my way or the highway, and expect that to go down the rest of the time. Like, you literally got to be able to coexist. Like, literally.
But what we see between the issues number 1 and number 2 of the Civil War is kind of a beefing up, so to speak, of the storyline. We really kind of see a lot of the gaps being filled in with regards to various superheroes getting involved in different aspects of the events as they're unfolding, in addition to seeing some supervillains kind of being incorporated into the fold of both S.H.I.E.L.D. and the anti-superhuman registration movement. And ultimately, as we progress throughout the Civil War storyline, we will see that these tie-ins will become more and more expansive, in addition to being larger in number. And so what we're going to do over the course of this video is we're going to discuss these tie-ins, in addition to really kind of following up with the second part of our Civil War discussion. So starting with She-Hulk issue number 8, we see several things going on here. One of the first things we see is really just kind of a way for Marvel to segue into events that will take place later on by establishing to us that She-Hulk and John Jameson are in a very serious relationship. In addition, what we also see is that Rage and Justice, two Avengers and former members of the New Warriors, have enlisted the aid of She-Hulk due to the fact that some anonymous individual has created a website called DestroyAllWarriors.com, and as a result of this, they have listed the identities of everyone who was a member of the New Warriors, and people are out killing them, in addition to killing members of their families or else just beating them in a severe state. What we also see is that once She-Hulk files a lawsuit against the company that is hosting this website, Escape Enterprises, her identity is revealed by the person who is hosting this website. Now we switch over to John Jameson, and what we see is that John Jameson is meeting with Steve Rogers, and Steve Rogers Rogers has enlisted his aide to tell him whether or not She-Hulk is willing to fight on his side. Now, John Jameson doesn't really know whether or not She-Hulk will fight for Steve Rogers, and he in fact tells him that he really doesn't know whether that's the case or not, and he's not really comfortable divulging any information that Jennifer Walters wouldn't want him to divulge. At this point, we jump back to the court scene, and what we see is that Tony Stark actually reveals to She-Hulk that Eastcape Enterprises is a dummy corporation, and that he actually has the name and address of the person who is running the website, which he gives to She-Hulk with no real strings attached. What we also see is that She-Hulk, in addition to former members of the New Warriors, confront this individual, and this individual turns out to be Carlton Lefroy, I think is his name.
Name is Carlton LaForge. What? You mean to tell me he's a you get what I mean. You get what is Carlton gonna do? Man, got the whole New Warriors pulling up while he's just duh, 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 duh. Carlton.
He is actually a former New Warrior himself. The only difference here is that he actually didn't have any powers. He was really kind of a mascot. So think of him as the Robin of the New Warriors. He was pivotal in terms of being a cheerleader, more or less, but he didn't really have any abilities per se. What we also see is that his rationale for creating this website was that he was hoping it would be a way to kind of force former members of the New Warriors to kind of give up in order to prevent future repercussions as a result of their identities being revealed, and that he didn't actually mean for any of this violence and anyone to actually die in the process. What we ultimately see as we kind of progress towards the end of this issue is that the neighborhood becomes aware that the New Warriors are confronting Carlton Lefroy, and they actually kind of turn into an angry mob of sorts and begin to kind of incite violence. But we see that John Jameson arrives in time to save She-Hulk in addition to the other members of the New Warriors, and then proposes to She-Hulk. So while I wouldn't go as far as to say that the events in She-Hulk issue number 8 are boring or anything, what I would say is that I don't believe that story is nearly as rich and entertaining as the story that we get in Wolverine volume 3 issue number 42. And the reason why is because one of the greatest aspects of Wolverine comics is the inner monologue that we get to follow along with as we progress through the comic book, and this issue is no different. Now at this particular point in time, one thing to bear in mind is that Wolverine is both a member of the New Avengers as well as an X-Man, so he really kind of holds allegiances to both sides. And as we begin the comic, we see that he is involved in an effort to stop the actions of the Crusader, a religious fundamentalist who has hijacked a C-130 and plans to use stolen money to finance a terrorist plot that will destroy several headquarters of superheroes. We see that Wolverine is able to dispatch the Crusader along with his minions pretty swiftly and actually crashes the plane in a cornfield. From there, he travels to a bar where he sees the Stamford incident unfold on television, and he's actually paged by the Avengers to assist in the cleanup process. While he's assisting in cleanup, we see him overhearing a conversation between Tony Stark and Captain America, where we learn that Nitro actually survived his self-detonation and that he hitched a ride out of town.
I mean, I didn't bring this up in the last one either. Like, if that's his power, like, how would he not Nitro? Like, if that's his power, is to like blow up or some form of pyrokinetics, it's just like, wouldn't he have survived? That doesn't make any sense for him not to survive or just to, you know, kill himself in there. If this is supposed to be like part of this grand scheme to start something or to get rid of superheroes, why would you just use all your power on one attack? Like, I don't know. Like, that's just me though.
On a truck. From there, we learn that several days have passed with no real information regarding the whereabouts of Nitro, and we actually see that Wolverine is asked to leave a restaurant due to the fact that the patrons, who are humans, are really kind of fearful and don't want him there because
man's face. Who in the world stole his nose and his lips? Look at this man's face. Boy, don't do it like that. Don't do it like that. He has no upper lip. Where is his upper lip?
Because of the current climate involving superheroes. And this, I think, is one of the coolest aspects of the story, because it really kind of gives us a very nuanced idea and really kind of a beefing up of how it is that the world exists at this point in time with regards to humanity's perception of superheroes. As he leaves the restaurant, he takes the back door, and he is confronted by a group of staff from the restaurant who have knives and various weapons, but of course they flee once he reveals his claws. From this point, we jump to the meeting that we discussed in Civil War, Volume 1, or I'm sorry, the first video that we did in Civil War, where we see that various individuals are discussing and they're talking about the superhuman registration and so on and so forth. We see that Wolverine meets with Tony Stark, who tells him not to go searching for Nitro. But we really kind of see Tony Stark wording this in a way that he's really kind of asking for Wolverine to go search for him, just because of the fact that the search for Nitro is in the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. And he says that if S.H.I.E.L.D. knew where he was or knew how to find him, they would have found him already, which really kind of leaves it out there that Nitro just may very well not be found. At this point, Wolverine's unable to accept this. He is unwilling to accept this just because of the fact that the actions of Nitro led to the deaths of several hundred children, which he is unwilling to let go unpunished. So we really see him kind of talk to Luke Cage. And when he's talking to Luke Cage is of course siding with registration, and Wolverine makes the statement that this whole registration movement with regards to superheroes is very similar to the Nazi Germany movement. And of course, Luke Cage is really unable to kind of compare the two and says that our government and the actions of their superhuman registration policies is vastly different from what's going on in Germany, but Wolverine doesn't really buy it. We see that Wolverine travels to the Xavier Mansion, and
first of all, that's an extreme comparison. You're comparing a genocide to just signing up. You're comparing somebody murdering a whole belief system over the fact, or to another, which is basically just, somebody standing outside a supermarket and basically having you sign up for something. You're comparing those two. They don't really
attempts to enlist the aid of Emma Frost and Cyclops in order to track Nitro. But of course they turn it down. And the reason why is because at this point in time, they don't want to get involved in the Civil War. Just because there's already enough hatred out there for mutants already, they don't simply want to compound that by coming out in support of, coming out against a bill that humans support, which will ultimately turn them against them more than they already have. We actually see that Wolverine eventually leaves and travels back to Stamford, Connecticut, where he picks up the scent of Nitro and the truck that he had hitched a ride on. And then the comic really kind of comes to a close as we begin to realize that he is going to go on this quest for vengeance, despite the fact that Tony Stark had asked him not to. So where Civil War issue number 1 really kind of set the stage, really kind of introduced to us this idea that things were changing, that things were progressing, and that superhuman registration was on its way to becoming a reality, Civil War issue number 2 really kind of builds on that. And in this comic, we will see that superhuman registration actually becomes a reality. And what we see is that as we begin to open the comic, as we begin to progress to the first few pages, that S.H.I.E.L.D. has captured several supervillains. Now, the concern that S.H.I.E.L.D. has, specifically Maria Hill, is that around 72 supervillains have been captured in an extremely short amount of time. And she believes it's virtually impossible that Captain America could have done that in such a short amount of time. And so her concern is that Captain America is no longer working alone, that Captain America has allies, but they don't really know who those allies are. From here, we really kind of jump to a fast-paced sort of thing going on in the sense that we see the superhuman registration has now passed Congress, and that in 24 hours it will become law, and that individuals who do not register themselves, who do not reveal their identities to the federal government, will be branded as outlaws and will be rounded up accordingly. In addition, we see that Tony Stark is hailed as a hero by the federal government, and that Captain America is considered public enemy number one for the most part. We also switch to the Fantastic Four. Now, not a whole lot is given to us here, but this is extremely important as we progress later on in the comics, because what we see here is that Reed Richards is working on some kind of a top secret project that he is keeping confidential from everyone, including his family. In addition, I'd also like you guys to take particular note of the Thing, who was kind of taking care of the children of Susan Storm and Reed Richards, Franklin Richards, and so on. And this really kind of hits home with the idea of what's going on with the Civil War, that everybody is stretched thin, that it affects everybody, and that subtle things like being able to have dinner with the family just isn't there. Now, from this point, we actually see a pretty interesting thing with Tony Stark. What we see here is that he actually expresses doubt over whether or not what they're doing is right. He doesn't have this absolute certainty that things are going to work out well. He is really just kind of hoping that they're doing the right thing. Now, this I think is kind of important because it gives us depth to Tony Stark. It gives us this understanding that he does not believe that what's happening may be absolutely right and that it may go totally awry. He does not have 100% faith in this cause, and he genuinely believes that what he's doing is going to set them along the path to regaining public trust, in addition to providing a more responsible atmosphere for superheroes. Now, from here we jump to 24 hours later, and this is past the deadline. This is once the midnight hour has gone by, and those who have not registered themselves are now considered outlaws. And what we see is that a superhero who is bulletproof, named the Patriot, he's really stopped a mugging, but now he's being chased by S.H.I.E.L.D. And what we see is that the Patriot, along with the Young Avengers, are caught by S.H.I.E.L.D., and they are rounded up to be taken to a holding center because of the fact that they chose not to register. Now we switch to Daredevil, and we don't really know where Daredevil is, but we see that he's having a conversation with another individual, and that he reveals that Captain America is undercover in an attempt to free the Patriot along with the Young Avengers. From this point, we switch to the vehicle that is transporting the Patriot and the Young Avengers, and we see that it's actually Captain America driving the vehicle. He throws the passenger out, who is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, and along with a couple other members of the Young Avengers, is able to escape from the bridge in which they are trapped and travel back to the location to which they are hiding out at. And what we learn is that this is actually one of the 20 some odd secret bases that Nick Fury has around the world, and that Nick Fury himself is undercover. This is really just kind of a way for Marvel to point to us to say Nick Fury is still in the picture as far as Marvel Comics go. It's just he's not part of the Civil War at this particular point in time. What we also see is that the attention of the New Warriors, the Patriot, Captain America, and others is being drawn to a screen as a press conference is undergoing involving Tony Stark and others. And this is really kind of a cool point in the comic, because what we see here is that virtually everybody is watching. The Fantastic Four, Susan Storm as she sits with Johnny Storm, the Daily Bugle, Aunt May and Mary Jane. And what we see is that Spider-Man reveals his identity publicly. Now, this is a very important point in Marvel Comics, and the reason why is because over the publication history of Spider-Man, we've seen his identity revealed, forcefully for the most part, but sometimes willingly. Of course, we saw him reveal his identity to Black Cat. We saw where he was supposedly unmasked by J. Jonah Jameson, although he had tricked J. Jonah Jameson into believing that it was they were doctored images and so on and so forth. But this marks the very first time in which Peter Parker will stand up in front of cameras and tell everybody who he is. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys in the next video.
Crazy. But, dang, it's getting speechless already, man. It's only been we're only 2 episodes in, and I didn't think it was going to level up, and it did. Always bringing the heat. Mr. Comics Explained, shout out the man again. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Like I said, I definitely appreciate every one of you guys for tuning on in, all the kings and queens. I appreciate you. Make sure you check out the store. There's merch on there. Copy some Royal Comics merch. And let me also know any other comics you guys would like me to react to in the near future. I love you guys. Stay royal out there.
Only real chicks got my back. Only real Vegas